Oh, Crowzone, what do you think is going to be? What's Uncle holding on to today?
You know, I was gonna say I usually like to call for a nice weapon like the bow or the hammer for them, but the last two races I commentated got that, so we're looking at something like Kane O'Brien today, I think.
Well, we're starting out with the big 20 in Link's house, so that'll be good if they need to buy some bombs later. But I'm personally hoping not for a bomb start. That seems to be the more complex beginning for many people.
Absolutely, and it also kind of changes and slows down that escape sequence, just waiting for all the bombs to go off. And I don't know, I like the fast. I like it when they go fast. So we'll see what happens in just a few moments as they are making their way into the back of escape or the escape sequence.
We'll say the nice thing with the bomb start is then you have those bombs, hopefully for the back of escape and getting those 3 items, and you don't have to think about it later. But let's see what Uncle has for us today.
So the fire rod, we had a correct call there in the chat from Astronerd. Called that on us. And in our first chest here, we get an extra 100 rupees, so that's going to be excellent for our runners. They got bottle vendor money. Hopefully by the end of this, if they don't already have bombs, they'll be able to also get bombs. That kind of makes things a little bit more comfortable for a runner when they are making their way through Kakariko Village at the beginning. MrJohnnySpot kind of getting trolled by that one green guard, didn't want to let him through, and gave him a full pot of magic, but hasn't even used his fire rod yet, so what a waste.
Yeah, I have a feeling that these runners are going to be trying to get some bombs on their way through the escape today because, again, as we've mentioned, very helpful when you hit the back of escape and you don't have to go back and think about it and just clear it right away.
Yeah, with the fire rod, you kind of want to be cautious with your number of fire rod uses, so that does make farming for bombs a little bit more tricky. You can... Oh, it's not going to matter at all, because they're in the first chest here in escape. They get a pack of 10.
That's a nice start. To get the fire rod is a nice early weapon on Uncle. To get those 10 bombs really sets you up not only for the back of escape, but for Kakariko Village as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And as well, they're going to have the fire rod if Skullwoods is a early crystal dungeon that is completable if they find a sword along the way. That's always a very nice thing because it's a short, quick dungeon. Yes, having to fight the moth on low hearts and in green mail might be difficult, but we'll see what happens when they get there.
And it may turn out entirely to be irrelevant if they find out that Skullwoods is a pendant and they don't even have to fight Mothula, which seems to be a possibility when you get these early fire rods.
werfjig is avoiding that extra big 20, and so did MrJohnnySpot that they had on their screen, so don't feel the need for the early rupee horde.
About to see what Zelda has in her cell. Hopefully something good for the runners. And if they get the Mire, I've seen a lot of people use that to go ahead and warp back to the beginning of the castle. So sometimes it's a really nice start for runners.
And MrJohnnySpot kind of collecting up a couple extra rupees here. Will serve him well when he gets to Kakariko Village in the event that he does need to buy more bombs, but with 10, it's very unlikely that he's going to be in any trouble at this part.
The nice thing is they both do have that 100 rupees for the bottle vendor, and then, as you said, they have some extra in case they need to buy something from the shop in Kakariko. So I would say both these runners are off to a very nice start, as you know, being, of course, very cautious with their fire rod and their magic supply, but off to a very nice start.
Yeah, kind of finding that 10 bomb stack really changes the dynamic of the intro. It's really just a relaxed escape sequence now for them. There's no stress. Fire rod's a very powerful weapon. It does a lot of damage. werfjig getting caught up here in this hallway, but it does a lot of damage. It doesn't really... it actually can hit multiple targets at once, so you don't really need to worry too much about it. The only downside to it is the limited number of shots that they will have. And of course, when you don't have to farm for bombs, that's not really a problem. There's only one more creature that they do need to kill, and that's that rat in the later part of escape to get a key. So our runners are now...
Go ahead.
Our runners are now just neck and neck almost heading into the dark part. Just a recap for people who are watching, if you don't have the lantern yet, in Randomizer, it gives you the light cone as a freebie for the back of escape sequence. but they will be forced to find the lantern if they want to have any non-dark rooms later on in the seed.
And of course, for anyone joining Randomizer for the first time, the Randomizer takes a Link to the Past, a favorite game in the early 90s on SNES, and it takes all the items and randomizes them into different locations around the overworld and in the dungeons in a way that can be logically completed by any runner, as long as you follow the breadcrumbs and use some puzzle-breaking skills. So that's where we are today in this tournament.
So werfjig there, managing to get that last rat. Ooh, MrJohnnySpot chasing down his, but was able to select the correct one to get that key. And we are going to take a look at the 3 chests here in the back of Escape. Perhaps we'll find some significant items here. So the map, another +5 bomb capacity upgrade and 10 arrows. Not really what anyone is kind of hoping for there, but glad to get them out of the way.
Yeah, despite the fact that the back of Escape here didn't really hold much of a treasure hoard for these runners, it's going to be nice to kind of check that off on their list and not have to come back to later.
Yeah, I have seen sometimes when if you don't have bombs through the escape sequence and you have not yet found a lift upgrade and progression is in those 3 chests, it is a nightmare. So werfjig is the first to leave and he gets himself the fighter sword for his troubles. So 6 minutes and 15 seconds out of Escape is very decent time. Not the fastest, but significantly quick enough to be on par with what we expect. And we get a map check here as well, seeing that we have crystals in Tower of Hera and Eastern Palace, as well as a pendant in the desert.
Of course, getting that early sword is going to be very helpful for these runners, and it does completely open up Skullwoods once they get there because they can slash away those vines. We're going to see what's in this tree pole, and it is just a little bit of magic for the runner.
You know, that's a nice thing. If I were them, I would probably want to pick up that magic. You know, they have a fire rod. It's another powerful weapon that's available to them. They both elect to take the first 2 that were easy to grab. And we're going to see what's inside the lumberjack hut. It's a set of 3 bombs, so not an indicator yet that they'll need to go for Aghanim 1.
All right, well, we got a couple of items here in the Lost Woods that the runners are going to go take a look at. Hopefully something good for them, and we'll see if that helps to progress them through the seed. And then, of course, we have the very, very item-dense location, Kakariko Village, that they're going to be entering quite shortly. Just a piece of heart there. We're going to be dropping down and seeing what this second item is.
Yep, just 3 more bombs in the bandits' hideaway. werfjig chooses to pick them up because he has picked up some bomb capacity upgrades, so you might as well grab them just to make sure you have more bombs for later points of the game.
Certainly have seen a lot of seeds where there's bomb drought, and so I bet it's a really welcome sight for the runners to see so many bombs this early on that they won't have to spend their hard-earned rupees to getting more from Kakariko.
Yeah, to full clear Kakariko, you do need 3 bombs inside Kakariko Village, plus 1 more if there's something at Maze Game. And that can be troublesome if you have a low bomb numbers at the beginning of the game. So with both of these runners at 12, they're going to be laughing. They'll be able to complete all of this and still have plenty more for later parts of the game. So we find our fire shield, a big 20, a piece of heart, and the fire shield here in Blind's hut.
Just 10 arrows in that back chest there, so got a couple of shields Blind was holding on to. So we have 1 more shield outstanding in the game, and we will likely be going over to the well next to be grabbing those items there.
Yeah, the fighter shield is one of those funny things, that it doesn't really help, but the shield upgrades are beneficial in a couple of boss fights. Blind, of course, is made easier by the fire shield. And as well as a few other locations in the game, and if later on they do end up in Turtle Rock, Laser Bridge with the Mire shield is just so much easier. So the well doesn't really give our runners anything of value. 50 rupees is nice, a full heart container and some pieces of heart, bottle vendor as well, just another piece of heart. So we haven't really seen all that many exciting items here in Kakariko Village. For them to make it through that high item density parts with no hints at progression is very rare. Blue mail here in the chicken hut. Again, a nice item, but really not what either runner is hoping to find at this time.
Yeah, it's interesting when you go through these high density locations, then you start to think about what are some of these one-off locations that stick in the back of your head. Though we do still have the South Shore, which has the dam, it has the item inside and outside, and it also has the mini Moldorm cave. But then after that, you start to really think about where to go next.
Yeah, this was a very low item Kakariko Village. In fact, we didn't find anything that our runners that will breadcrumb our runners anywhere outside of the standard opening, as you say. Just some additional rupees there on the library ledge. Probably won't. Oh, look at that! The mirror shield in the maze.
Wow, so Kakariko Village, certainly full of shields today, and people are starting to whisper in the chat about Laser Bridge being an answer eventually, so we'll see what happens.
Well, that early accessible mirror shield really does indicate that Turtle Rock is going to be a place that they might want to go. It's just very a telling item location. Usually, the other logic elements that would also indicate that are the Cape or the Cane of Burna. But early mirror shield is something I haven't seen in quite some time. werfjig finding the early lantern here in the dam.
I have to say, early lantern, I would say for many, many runners is a very welcome sight because it takes out of contention any possibility of having to do those dark rooms, and some of them are quite complicated. So, however, it is one of the, I've heard it called the Horseman of Aghanim, so it's one of those harbingers of possible Aghanim seed.
Yep, it is absolutely true. At this point, the runners simply need a way to get through the barrier, so either the cape or a sword upgrade, and that's going to give them access to Castle Tower at this early juncture. We find a bottle under the water in the dam there, a soggy bottle with a bee in it. I'm not sure how that bee managed to stay alive while floating under the lake there. werfjig's going to make use of him here in the mini Moldorm cave. That bee is going to go ahead and sting all these mini Moldorms to death. It's kind of a fun way to clear it out. Get another piece of heart, 5 rupee, another piece of heart, 10 arrows, and another piece of heart. Wow.
It's been a really item impoverished or progress impoverished start to this seed. So now, of course, we have our one-off locations. They're gonna have to start checking. They do have Sahasrarla's hut and Eastern as well, which is, in logic up to that they can't fully complete it, but there are certainly 3 items in there and 3 items in Sahasrarla. So 6 more items in the vicinity. So we'll see what they end up doing.
Yep, and there is, of course, as well, the dreaded Agonist Cave. Most runners have a hard time finding an early route to check that final Sphere 1 location. Sphere 1 being the items that can be checked early on with no other progression. Since it's a one-off spot, it does actually have a tendency to hold something of value, but it's difficult to efficiently route. There, werfjig gets another big 20. And he's going to save and quit out, probably head over to Eastern Palace area in Sahasrarla's hut now.
Good thing too about Sahasrarla's hut is that you not only can get those 3 items, but you also get some intel as to what the green pendant is. So we will see, since it wasn't in the light world, which dark world dungeon ends up being the green pendant.
Yeah, this seed is at this time being very linear. Sometimes that's a blessing, sometimes it's a curse. At this point, it means that our runners are basically pigeonholed into going the exact same way as one another. There has been no opportunity for a divergence of choice. So we'll see if MrJohnnySpot decides to head to Eastern Palace as well, or instead makes that long walk all the way down to Desert. werfjig getting just another bottle out of Sahasrarla's hut. This time it's filled with green goo.
I'm wondering if perhaps Sick Kid has some progression on him because we do have 2 bottles now, which puts him into the logic. So it'll be interesting to see if our runners do opt to go check him.
Yeah, it would be potentially a high probability of something at this point. Even if we have to do AGA 1, that's just going to give us access to very few item locations at this juncture just based on what we have available to us in logic.
Well, we have werfjig jumping into Eastern Palace. It does have 3 unique items in here. It may be that one of them is on the Armos Knights, but we do have some possibility for progression here. And if not, then of course we still have Agina's Cave over by Desert Palace, and we still have Sick Kid as well.
So 3 bombs, there goes 1 of our items in Eastern Palace. At this point, the runners don't want to see that. They're definitely hoping for value here. Because keep in mind, they can't go to Aghanim 1 yet. They don't have a way past the barrier, so something has to be here. Or in Aghanis Cave. Or at Sick Kid, I suppose.
Yeah, and only some rupees are in that second chest, so we only have 1 possible item left. And as you were saying, Crozone, it's actually not a bad thing for a seed to be this sort of straightforward and bottlenecky at the beginning, because it does sort of lead you in one direction without having to make many decisions at this point. But you know, at this point you start to wonder, so where do I go next? What off location do I check? What will give me my progression boost? Because of course, in order to get into Dark World, you need Hammer and Gloves, or you need Titan's Mitts, and you of course need the Moon Pearl. So you have some items that you're still looking for to get into that Dark World.
Mm-hmm. So there's the big key. So we're going to be able to check the big key chest before we walk past it, which is actually a nice thing for routing, especially when you know you're not going to be able to complete the dungeon. Unless, of course, they find the bow. And a piece of heart. So there is Eastern Palace, completely devoid of anything that we need. They've got Sick Kid and Aghanis Cave, and that's about it left for them to check.
And the opportunity to really sequence break here is low. Without the Moon Pearl, you can't do the Waterfall Cave. And without gloves, you can't go into Death Mountain, rather. So it's got to be in one of those 2 locations. We'll see, of course, if the Master Sword is hiding in one of those 2 locations. It could mean Aghanim is next up on the docket here.
Yeah, and at this point, I think I would check both of them if I were the runners, just to see what I get before committing. If, like, for example, if werfjig here goes to Aghanis Cave and gets the cape or the Master Sword upgrade, I think I'd still just swing by Sick Kid just to see. He's going to give us a look-see at what's on the Desert Ledge as well for later information. I like this kind of a play. At least you're getting 2 things out of this, and it's the Master Sword there, or a sword upgrade at least, so the book could also start leading us down that path at this point. So here we go. 1 of 2 potential spots left. We'll see if it's the one that is going to push them in a direction. And there's a second sword upgrade, so that really is very telling at this time.
So where do you go now? Do you just kind of dive right into Aghanim? I would check Sick Kid, as you were saying before, but do you just kind of say, well, it's gonna happen, might as well go check Aghanim now, or do you go to Sick Kid first?
You know, I like going to Sick Kid first here. You never know. Sometimes there has been very trolly seeds that have suggested that Ag is required. If Sick Kid, for example, has the glove, that really changes things, or the flute, or even the book. You know, like opening up some other place to go first may really be an indicator that it's just kind of red herring us into Castle Tower. And that, since it is a significant time cost, if you don't have to go there, it's really worth avoiding. And looks like MrJohnnySpot is also going to head over to check Sick Kid before he pulled the trigger on Castle Tower. Moon Pearl as well would be something that it would be worth finding here, just so that when you get Dark World access, perhaps there's actually something to do. Nope, just a big 20, so that's where we're going.
All right, onward to Aghanim. I feel like every single match that I commentate has Aghanim, so I apologize to both the runners if you're watching this on a VOD. It's probably my fault, so good luck on Aghanim.
So now we get to watch them climb the tower, the dreaded tower. Again, it's not anyone's favorite thing to do. It's a long, tedious dungeon with dark rooms. With low hearts, it's not exactly the safest and easiest place, but our runners do have the blue mail to go along with it. So that's actually more advantageous than they would have been if they were playing the game in the natural order. So I'm sure they're not upset by it, at least from a ability to complete it. Oh, werfjig, accidentally missing his swipe on the barrier beast there.
Well, the good news for the audience and for us is that we get to play the blue ball game in just a little bit, but stay tuned for that.
Oh, absolutely. We can see just how trolly Aga is going to be for us. So although there are chests here in the castle tower sequence, they have to contain keys. So this literally could provide us with, by default, one item location, and that is the pyramid ledge.
MrJohnnySpot trying for that that strat where you get kind of both the guards to bump themselves up against that middle barrier so you can grab them at the same time, and that was almost got it, just about. So it's difficult sometimes to grab those two guards at the same time.
Yeah, at some point the question starts to be if there was a sequence break that would have helped them in this, if Hobo, for instance, has something that would have been valuable. It was really the only thing that they had available to them, I think. But it would have been interesting, like if he had Moon Pearl, which would allow the person completing Aga Tower to at least take a look at some other item locations in Palace of Darkness, for instance, coming out of this particular dungeon.
Right, I mean, if there was a sequence break, you know, the other one, of course, you could have farmed for rupees and checked Zora, but you couldn't get that waterfall cave without the Moon Pearl, so, you know, I think this was the right play. Unfortunately, the seeds very quickly sort of just caused a drought of items, and you know, I think this is the way you had to go.
Yeah, they really had no choice. But it is going to be something that we'll keep an eye on. Let's try to remember. Oh, werfjig taking a fall on the narrow path here. We'll try to remember what happens when they hit Hobo, because if it was something that would have allowed them to avoid this, can you imagine the change that would have made for the game?
Oh, absolutely, and it looks like we are getting to our Aghanim fight, so go ahead and put in those in that chat. How many blue balls do you think Aghanim is going to gift us today? I'm gonna go with 3.
3 blue balls, that's not too many. I've had some unfortunate 7s in my life. So this is just a preview of what the final fight of the game. There's one, our first blue ball. And 2.
So once we get past this Aghanim fight, what are our possibilities for this pyramid ledge?
At this point, it really needs to be something that provides progression for our runners. So it could be the flute, it could be the gloves. There's our third set of blue balls. It could be the Moon Pearl. And it could also be the book. But that would be really nasty. The book allowing us access to Desert Palace, where there's potentially a couple more items. And there goes Aga 1. Flippers as well would give us some things. I think that might be about it.
Oh, we're about to get the news here as werfjig descends the pyramid and is going to pick up A moon pearl. There it is.
So this is actually another very linear find for werfjig. Unfortunately, as soon as he does, a screen transition or a plane transition, the moon pearl will become active. As I said, it's very linear. There's really only one place he can go that he hasn't been at this point, and that's into the Palace of Darkness, which has to not be bow locked at this point. So he'll be able to get something in this dungeon.
Well, he has enough rupees to pay the scamming monkey, so that's good. But you're right, cannot complete the dungeon without hammer, without bow. So if this is a crystal dungeon, it will be a double dip at least. Hoping that will be all it is. But we'll see if it's a pendant dungeon. Then these runners may opt to wait a little bit until they go back in.
So we see that Turtle Rock is the green pendant, Skull Woods is the red pendant on that map check. And I didn't quite see where both of the red crystals were. Looks like Ice Palace and Thieves Town. So there's our key, allowing us access to the other side of Palace of Darkness. And that is true. It is possible to completely check this dungeon if they make use of the potion glitch to get past the bow side, but they cannot complete the dungeon without a bow.
Right, so it looks like werfjig's going to open up the door over there to the chest that's sitting over there on the ledge. May not go back for it again unless, as you said, he uses that potion glitch, but he will open up quite a few items before deciding what to do next, at least in this front half.
Or, of course, he could find the bow here in Palace of Darkness as well as the hammer, which would be a very interesting turn of events. Another green potion.
See the bottles and potions, the money, for sure. So far, nothing terribly exciting for werfjig here, other than a bottle, unless that's exciting for you. He does have the lamp, so he can go ahead and check those dark room locations in the back, which have, I believe, 3 items, and then you have the harmless hellway and the 2 items in the basement. So we've got a few that we can go ahead and check here.
Yep, and since we have the lantern, of course, all of this is logic. The artisanal arrow there in the chest that werfjig just found. It was the finest crafted arrow in the lands.
That's a fantastic title for that arrow.
That's my thing for it now. From now on. You can buy one of those at Whole Foods for $29.99. And we're gonna go into the dark maze now. Oh, unfortunately, just MrJohnnySpot just getting bodied there.
Hey, you never know. That might be the arrow.
I don't think it was an intentional death warp at that point. I wasn't paying too much attention to exactly where he was, unfortunately. And there's the hammer, an almost vanilla hammer, just one item location away from its actual vanilla spot, which is this big key chest.
It's a pretty exciting find here to have that hammer open up in its French vanilla location.
Yeah, the hammer actually gives them a lot of potential places to check now. That opens up the southern route so they can go over to Hype Cave. This actually kind of gives us some hope that Hype Cave will be truly hype, as werfjig now is intentionally going to death warp out of this dungeon. He may choose to further explore some of the item locations, but I'm going to guess that the answer to that question is no.
Yeah, I would think that he's going to go Hype Cave at this point. You know, we still don't have gloves, so we can't get up to Catfish. And we don't have Hookshot either, which would bring us to closer to Western Dark World. So Hype Cave, I have a feeling, has got something to behold.
Yeah, now the question is it going to be a 2 out of 7 or 5 out of 7 Hype Cave? We'll find out momentarily. Yeah, and as chat is indicating, this has been an incredibly linear seed. 30 minutes in, we don't have a single crystal boss kill yet, and the seed has literally not allowed them to make any divergence. They've been following in one another's footsteps the whole way along, as werfjig makes its way to the southern area of the Dark World, and we expect to see Hype Cave momentarily.
I mean, the nice thing is if you're a runner and you notice a very linear seed, you know that your opponent likely is encountering the same, so you don't really feel too far behind or ahead at this point. So at least that stress is taken out as, oh, MrJohnnySpot. I don't know if that was an intentional death warp or an accidental death there.
Yep, so our first item here is a full heart container, followed by the magic mirror, another piece of heart, 5 bomb capacity upgrade, and a 5 arrow capacity upgrade. So that was a 2 of 7 Hype Cave. I mean, the mirror is a very important item for them. It's going to allow them to check some additional locations, but we really didn't see the world unlock yet. And so we'll see what happens momentarily. We're going to be able to check Stumpy and the South Grove cave. We don't have access to Village of Outcasts yet.
We do have the dig game as well. Of course, that'll be where the runners will have to end that run toward the Village of Outcasts because they do not have the gloves. But we do have the flute in, again, another location that is very close to its original.
At this point, Hera is now unlocked with the flute. Before, they needed a lift upgrade for it, so the mirror wasn't going to do enough on its own, but now we have. Now the world is starting to open up a little bit, so that's exciting. That's an exciting item location. Additionally, that'll give them East Death Mountain from the top direction. They do have the hammer so that they can go down Spiral Cave and then back up Paradox Cave, so lots more available to them now. And they are going to be able to activate that flute fairly easily by using the mirror after they dig game.
Yeah, so we have werfjig going ahead and completing that dig game, then likely going to mirror back into the light world, activate that flute, and we find the gloves in the dig game. Digging up an old pair of gloves, it's pretty nice value, pretty nice surprise for this route for werfjig and MrJohnnySpot, not far behind.
Yeah, what a nice south route was very nice. Hype Cave was okay, but better items were found outside of it at this point. With a lift upgrade, they now have access to a lot more of the Dark World combined with the hammer, so now we actually have a situation where the runners are going to be able to check multiple locations, and we might see some divergence.
Of course, I'd imagine werfjig, as you said, is well. He also could go up Death Mountain the I guess we'll call it the traditional way by lifting up the rock and bringing the old man back home. So we have that item. We have the 2 on the western Death Mountain side, and then of course we have all of East Death Mountain open with that hammer as well.
Yeah, the play right now, although werfjig is going to go and do Village of Outcasts, I think, and perhaps even Skull Woods. Although Skull Woods we do know is a pendant, I believe, right? So I'm not sure. Maybe he'll do Thieves Town instead. The other play that's really open to them that is a lot of potential item checks is, of course, going up the tower, up the Death Mountain, completing Tower of Hera. They have all that they'll need to do that, and then coming back down the East Death Mountain side and getting all of those many checks there. So we'll see if one of them chooses to do that. werfjig here is going to go to Village of Outcasts at this time. Might stop by Skullwoods and look for some of the items, but instead is going to round the corner and head down.
I don't disagree with this play. I think it's one that makes sense. If you want to, you've activated Fluid, you're here to go into the Dark World. You have quite a bit of items. You have, I believe, 4 different items in Thieves Town to check, plus the overworld. So this is a decent check, and of course he knows in the back of his head that you have Death Mountain as well. So that could be the next play for him after this.
Yeah, when you have the flute, there is no routing to change or delay between making this or the other call. You can simply just flute to either location to start them off. So it's really just a choice-based decision.
The nice thing, too, with going into Thieves Town, likely, is werfjig will also be able to full clear it with the hammer. Some people will go in without the hammer, and of course there's an item that you have to leave behind in the big chest that is hammer locked. So he can at least full clear here if he chooses to do Thieves Town, which I would assume he's going to.
Yeah, from a routing efficiency standpoint, they're pretty much equivalent. Of course, there are some items you can find that would make one better than the other, but in Randomizer, we have no idea what you might locate and where. So we'll take a look and see what happens here. The first chest in Thieves Town was just the map, so we know that there's at the maximum 2 items. There's the first one, a blue rupee, so one more potential item here in the front part of Thieves Town, along with the big key. So finding the compass there tells us that we're going to get the big key here, and that means the rest of the items in Thieves Town are located in the back half of the dungeon.
Looked like MrJohnnySpot in his chess game got a 300 rupee drop. I didn't see werfjig get that, so that was kind of a lucky random chance there that he got that money. He puts him into Zora range if he so chooses to do that a little bit later.
Yeah, the first chest is always random. The second chest is always the same. So yeah, that was a very noticeable difference. werfjig getting a small heart. Not really what he wants out of there. So despite having the opportunity to diverge, both of our runners are taking the same pathway. And well, you can't really fault them for that. The seed has opened up a little bit. So perhaps after Thieves Town, we'll start to see some divergence. So unless they find something that will change their mind, I can't imagine them not going to that other high item density location of Death Mountain.
Right, and Chad is pointing out that the reason that MrJohnnySpot has become a rich businessman is he did get some money back for that B and then got the 100 rupee drop in the chess game.
That is the difference in their items. So werfjig is forced to kind of pick up these hearts here. You don't want to find some bloomerang. You don't really want to. You want to have a little bit of insurance when you fight blind.
MrJohnnySpot's got to be careful of his hearts here because he is very low. And this is a dungeon that can be a little unforgiving with some of these enemies, although they do have blue mail, which makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, it's still, a fairly low heart situation to be facing this early Dark World area.
well, werfjig is going back into the cell where he'll pick up another chest and blind. He's got a key which opens up the big chest on the left-hand side. He's going to pick up a couple of arrows as well. So we'll see. Hopefully, it looks like I think we have 2 more items left, and so we'll see an item in the big chest and then again on blind.
Yeah, we've only found so far a blue arrow, or blue meringue, and a blue rupee. So 2 more items to be found. One of them is this heart container, which is nice actually to find just an extra full heart at this particular juncture.
All right, well, werfjig is going to go ahead and go up and fight blind, which, of course, is a scripted fight. I am yet to be off book on that script, but it is going to be a fairly quick fight. You got the shield to help propel those fireballs as well.
He's just fishing for that last heart just to kind of replenish his health, but should have no problem. He has a fire shield. Yes, that's going to help deflect any errant fireballs.
Of course, we get the nice pun at the very beginning from blind. They say skiers often jump to conclusions, so thank you to the devs for that fantastic dialogue.
And did allow blind to get to the bottom half of the room, but was not an overly difficult fight. Gets the water toes, some flippers for werfjig's efforts here. That does actually make the routing north along the Dark World here even more efficient, because he'll be able to jump in the river and climb out and head over to Catfish. So we'll see if that's in the cards today, or if he's going to mirror out and head to Death Mountain, which looks like might be his particular choice at this time.
I mean, at this point, Death Mountain does have quite a few more items than if you were to go and take care of Catfish and Zora and the Waterfall Cave. But we're going to go pick up Old Man first and bring him home, hopefully to a nice reward. And then see where we go from here, likely get to Spectral Rock Cave and Spectral Rock check. And then we'll see where werfjig plans on going.
Yeah, he's going to get a couple of hearts here along the way in the dungeon area. And as well, we know an additional heart container, so he's going to have some health. He was kind of at a danger close position there for a long time. His heart container indicator was beeping at us for a little while. But he'll be slightly replenished before his blind fight, which is nice for him. Old Man gives us a 50 rupee tip for escorting him out of that dark, dark cave. werfjig heads up to take a look at what's under Spectacle Rock and what's on top of Spectacle Rock, and I would assume to complete Tower of Hera.
Of course, the nice thing about having a hammer and going into Tower of Hera is that it does do tempered sword damage on Moldworm. So that is a nice little addition to any fight against Moldworm, and only a single rupee on top of Spectacle Rock. So I don't think the runners are going to be picking that up, when they warp there. But maybe they will,
A big 20 underneath is really not... This seed is really keeping its items close to its chest here. It doesn't really want to let things go easily. MrJohnnySpot weaving in and out of the fireballs there. You can hear the mirror shield deflecting a lot of fireballs there. And he gets his flippers, so we'll see what his plan of attack is at this point.
Well, werfjig is heading into Tower of Hera, so we will see. Tower of Hera, of course, has two items that are potential pickups here for our runners. Our first item is, well, not an item, it is a burrito in the bottom, and so we're going to be heading to the back to see if we can find either a small key, which will push werfjig into the basement, or a big key, which will give him the option. Looks like basement it is.
Ugh. No, basement is just such an awful thing to have to put up with, going through this tile room just to get the big key, just to go back up the tower, but you know that if you have to do it, so does your opponent.
Well, everyone get their coffee or tea or water ready. We're about to do, looks like an attempt at a coffee break here, and grabs those frames right on top of the blocks there. So taking a little bit of a break, it's nice for runners, and you can kind of catch your thoughts, collect your thoughts and catch your breath and see, what you'll be doing after you take care of Tower of Hera.
So MrJohnnySpot, conversely, is taking this north route here. He's going to go and take a look at what's on Graveyard Ledge. And as well, if he thinks about it, he can jump into the water there and go up to Catfish, which will give him a quick check at Zora, now that he's got the flippers. So this is a very efficient path for him to take at this time. Would be only made better if he had access to the boots to check a couple other locations along the way, but not too shabby. Grabs another heart container.
Well, werfjig gets his big key from the torch room there, and he's going to head up the Tower of Hera to see what items he could potentially pick up on his way up. It looks like MrJohnnySpot is indeed going to opt to do Death Mountain as well in Tower of Hera.
So once again, our runners are basically following along the same general path.
Looks like werfjig is taking out bombs. He might be attempting to do that bomb jump into the big chest, which can be a risky move, but if you pull it off, it is a nice time save.
Well, we do know... Oh, unfortunately, he fell down the hole. We do know now that it will be an item, since our items have to be on Trolldorm and on... and in the big chest. Unfortunately, that particular fall set him down 2 floors. Feels bad, man.
Yeah, that's a tough bomb jump. I know that I usually opt to just go ahead and drop down from the top floor just for the possible time sink that it could cause.
Yep, this time werfjig's electing to, you know, he's like, I'll give it one shot, and I'll just go do it the traditional way from this point on. So we'll expect to see him hit this star switch here and fall down from the top of this hole. Gets a bug net, decides to leave a bomb in the big chest there for that useless item at this point. Although it is nice to be able to collect fairies as necessary, at this point most of our runners are probably very comfortable without the bug net in their play of this particular game.
See, I would say the bug net is one of the most useful weapons because you can, of course, use them for Aghanim 2 to do some swag strats.
Yeah, I find it a little bit tedious in the Aghanim 2 fight. It's fun in Aghanim 1. But if you want to get those triples, I've yet to see a triple hit with the bug net. I'd love to see it, though. That would be amazing.
All right, werfjig has taken out Moldorm for his prize of a heart piece, which will not give him the full refill yet, but he will get a crystal, which is nice.
Yep, and the crystal, of course, will give him the full health refill. Oh, MrJohnnySpot missing the fire rod shot into coffee break. Twice now. And we're going to get a look now on the east side of Death Mountain, where we'll probably watch werfjig head down Spiral Cave and then up Paradox Cave. We'll get a quick look at the piece of heart there on the floating island first. And we begin the long, circuitous route of the Spiral Cave without boots.
Yeah, quite the walk of shame when you have to go without boots. It's a long and arduous journey downward, but certainly something you don't want to miss because that is a one-off location that you might forget about a little bit later on.
MrJohnnySpot electing to take a death warp here. His health must have been low enough that this is worthwhile instead of using the mirror. And now he's going to head up Tower of Hera.
Spiral Cave holding only 5 arrows for werfjig, but of course now we have Eastside Death Mountain to check for quite a few items before he decides on his next play.
Yeah, and at this point, we also have Zora open still. Of course, MrJohnnySpot and werfjig chose not to make that initial check when they had an opportunity earlier. So that's likely to be one of the potential next locations that they take a look in. 300 rupees in the first chest and another full heart container for werfjig. So we're starting to get healthy. And he definitely has his Zora money now.
All right, let's see what 5 items we have here. We have a fly bomb. We have the mitts. We have another heart container. The mitts is a great find. And we have a heart piece, which gives another heart. And we have quakes. We have the wavy coin. So a lot of good items in that cave. I would say that's the new hype cave.
Yeah, it was a much better cave than Hype Cave was, say. The mitts, of course, is unlocking immediately Super Bunny Cave for the runners, which will give them and a look at the Turtle Rock medallion requirements. Without boots or hookshot, though, we're not going to be able to get any of the goodies in the hookshot cave. But now our runners are going to have access to perhaps Misery Mire Shed and Checkerboard Cave, as well as the Desert Ledge.
And let's not forget there is a sword upgrade on that Desert Ledge that the runners had to leave behind before, so that'll be a nice back pocket item for them if they so decide to go that direction.
Yeah, and I think at this early juncture, getting into Tempered Cave or Tempered Sword is definitely worth the small divergence. So we see a mushroom here in Super Bunny Cave, and another piece of heart.
Well, getting that mushroom might be a nice route at this point if they wanted to go and take care of Catfish, Waterfall, Zora, and the mushroom fetch quest all at once. That would be a nice way to sort of clump all those routings together.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree that it gave them another opportunity for an efficient check. We see that it is Bombos here at Turtle Rock. So runners will file that in their memory and come back later. If they even have to. Turtle Rock, of course, being the green pendant. You never know.
So werfjig looks like he's going to use those flippers to go check a couple of water locations here. We have Hobo under the bridge, and we also have a hook shot on the island, which is interesting.
Yep, so that's definitely going to be immediately following this current path that he's on. I would imagine he's going to go and acquire hookshot.
Unfortunate that that didn't come a little bit sooner, so he could have routed in hookshot, the hookshot cave up on Dark Death Mountain. But that's all right. It's another location you can check later on if need be.
Yep, another reason why you might potentially take that jump in the water on your way to Eastern Palace, just to see what's there. But neither of our running having done so kind of throws that for a loop. And looks like werfjig is going to go from the south end now to get up to Waterfall Zora.
Of course, I believe at this point we also have Ice Palace in logic with the hammer and the fire rod, so that is also an option in those mitts.
Yeah, that's true. I would probably prefer to get the hookshot first, just in case you need to make that one difficult routing choice in Ice Palace, but they're, of course, going to be able to do that relatively easily, so... Hobo just has some rupees for our runners.
About to see what is on Zora's ledge, and then of course what is on Zora himself. We just have big 20 on Zora's ledge just hanging out there, and then we're going to see just a moment what Zora has for those 500 rupees today.
Now the question, of course, will become, when do you run up Death Mountain again to check Hookshot Cave? With Turtle Rock not being a crystal dungeon, you may not want to. You may want to try to avoid it. werfjig almost deciding not to pick up 300 rupees and then thinking better and saying, well, you know, 300 for 500 is better than nothing for 500.
Well, werfjig is saving and quitting and going south, perhaps even going into Swamp, and it looks like that might be the move he's making with that mirror and that hammer, and it is in logic at this point. It does have 6 items, so it could be a lucrative play for them.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll grab the hookshot first just so he can complete it, but that's probably where I would think he's heading next. MrJohnnySpot ends up, back at the pyramid. I was thinking he has another opportunity. It's going to get mirror bonked here, unfortunately for him. Another opportunity to head over to Catfish. But instead electing not to do so.
Alright, well, werfjig's picking up his hook shot, and we're going to see where he goes next. He's fluting on over to 6, likely to check Mire, see what pendant is required, what medallion rather is required to get in, and you have 3 items that you can get around the area, as well as your sword upgrade on the desert ledge.
Now, MrJohnnySpot here is not looking at Lake Hylia Island location. Let's hope that he does so at a later juncture. We see Ether for Mire, so runners don't have access there yet either. A big 20 is the first item in the Mire shed, and a shovel, so fetch quests. werfjig, with the knowledge that there's a tempered sword up here, is definitely going to go pick that up. So everybody, cross your fingers and hope MrJohnnySpot takes a look at what's on Lake Hylia Island. Yes, he is going to do so, and he'll see his hook shot there.
werfjig going back into the dark world, going to go check that checkerboard cave, of course, before going into perhaps going into desert, hoping, I'm sure, that it is not boots locked.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting call. There's 2 items there that might be valuable. It's a pendant dungeon though, so we'll see if he elects to make the trigger, pull the trigger on that yet. Just sees a big 20. And it looks like he's going to flute. I would suspect, as you originally thought, that he'll head to Swamp Palace. Oh, no, he's going to flute up to turn in the mushroom.
Good MrJohnnySpot throwing in the bottles to the waterfall of wishing just to get those filled with something good. And he is going to pick up, let's see, some blue goo, which is a nice, oh, we have bombos.
Free blue goo and bombos for the mushroom trade is excellent. That's the Turtle Rock required medallion. Of course, it feels bad to go into Green Pendant Turtle Rock at any point, so I'm going to assume that the runners will save that for last.
werfjig looks like he's going to be heading back into the Dark Worlds. Of course, he has Skull Woods completable. He might also be wanting to do some of those overworld quests like the frog and the chest to take care of those, but we'll see what he ends up doing. And it looks like he's going to head south, so that might be what he is doing.
Yeah, hammer pegs is available to him, saving Jeremiah, and then he has also easy access to take care of the purple chest.
Well, MrJohnnySpot is saving and quitting back into his home. He's going southbound. It looks like he's going southbound to take care of getting that hook shot as well.
Mm-hmm. So werfjig's going to have the opportunity after turning in the purple chest to go into Swamp Palace. So I like the efficiency of this particular route. Get a 50 rupee tip for rescuing Jeremiah from that skull prison he was in the Village of Outcasts.
I think werfjig's going to take care of hammer pegs first before he goes and saves the purple chest from its loneliness in that broken down home, as MrJohnnySpot is picking up his hook shot and going, let's see where he goes from here.
Just 10 arrows there in the hammer peg hole, nothing to write home about. MrJohnnySpot looks like he's going to go right to Swamp Palace now, so he's going to miss out on these extra checks that werfjig has done, but since they haven't proven to be helpful, he might actually get a little bit ahead at this juncture.
course, chat is. Oh, we got a butter sword. I'm gonna interrupt what I was just saying to say we got some butter here off of the purple chest. Nice sword upgrade. So we are. We have all of our swords having been discovered, and we also have all of our shields having been discovered.
So it looks like werfjig's actually going to throw us for a little bit of a loop. He flutes down to number 8, so I think he's going up to Ice Palace.
I was saying before I rudely interrupted myself that this is actually the second half of the 5-6 crystals. So as chat was pointing out, this also opens up the double-chested fairy on the pyramid.
Yeah, that is true. So even though there's less items to be had here in Ice Palace, it does unlock some additional checks in the overworld.
Well, we have 6 items potentially available here for MrJohnnySpot and 3 for werfjig, but I like the play going into the 5-6 crystal dungeons because it does open up that double-chested fairy location that could hold something significant for later.
Yep. So the first item here in Ice Palace is a full heart container again. Oh, unfortunately, werfjig missing the skip here.
Angrily throwing a pot at that. Why can't I think of the name? At that enemy. I'm just gonna say that enemy because I can't think of the name.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. They're just giant skeleton knights. They're not Staphos.
I almost said Skulltulus, but that is the wrong game.
So we're gonna get a look at our next item in just a few seconds here in Swamp Palace. Maybe they are just Staphos knights, and the regular skeletons are just Staphos. Yeah, excellent bomb jump. We get a compass there in the second item location for MrJohnnySpot, so he's got the big key and he's got the compass.
And that big key is nice. Ooh, we find ether in the big chest in Swamp, so that is nice for MrJohnnySpot. That will open up Misery Mire for him. Of course, he still needs to get that cane, but at least it is now allowed to be opened.
Oh, werfjig kind of have a little moment of decision making. Does he want to actually bomb and go the intended route to the big key? Misses the first one and gets the second hookshot skip there, so it was almost dangerous that he didn't do it.
So far, nothing terribly exciting in Ice Palace. Of course, again, it is at 5-6 crystal, so I think that this is a decent play from werfjig, but nothing to behold inside the dungeon as of yet.
Yeah, he's coming up on larger item density locations, so we might see something. He still has 2 things that he can pick up out of this dungeon. MrJohnnySpot making his way to the left side now of Swamp. Three bombs. And the map. So neither of our runners found anything that's going to make them feel very good. They're not getting progression towards their go mode at this time, other than the fact that they're clearing out required crystal dungeons.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that so far was at all exciting for MrJohnnySpot was he did get that ether to open up Mire, but other than that, it's been kind of a quiet route divergence in terms of items inside of the dungeon.
Yep, and the ether find was not like was on a pathway that you're going to go to no matter what, even if you're trying to the dungeon. So wasn't really a big benefit. Just another full heart container there in Ice Palace. So we're down to one more item. And it's the Magic Cape. So Ice Palace, we're now complete. Except for the Cold Stare fight.
Cape is a nice safety when you do fight Ganon at the end, and it also opens up the Bomb Cave, or Bumper Cave rather. So you know, that will be someplace that werfjig might opt to check in his run, but we'll see what he does after Ice Palace.
Well, there's the bow in Swamp, so Swamp now was the place to go. That's a big item location, or a big item to find, opening up Eastern and Palace of Darkness dungeons.
And with that mirror, MrJohnnySpot is going to have a really nice, easy way to route both those dungeons and pretty quickly. And having cleared out Eastern, I believe he also cleared out Eastern of the items, he's just going to go ahead and go right to Armos, you know, in the back.
And with that, I think for progression required items, that kills the pedestal for us. The Cane of Samaria, of course, would be needed to get into Turtle Rock, so could not contain the cane on pedestal.
Oh, we have dueling boss battles going on. We have Argus on the left with MrJohnnySpot and Cold Stare on the right with werfjig. You see, let's see who got both these. There are a lot of eyeball type bosses in Link to the Past, so.
Yeah, chat correctly pointing out that there's a possibility that boots are required. That 1 in 22 chance in Ganon's Tower. So Cold Stare fight with Butter Sword just so quick. Even if you have the puffs split up on you like werfjig did.
werfjig takes down Cold Stare, and MrJohnnySpot will be within moments taking down Argus. And of course, we'll see if werfjig opts to go and take care of the double-chested fairy. Of course, he also has that extra entry point now, having taken down Aghanim, which will make it a little bit easier to route into that check.
Yeah, that is always a nice kind of shortcut, just going up to the castle. So he's going to actually go ahead and look at Dig Spot. He did pick up the shovel earlier along the way. And MrJohnnySpot making the obvious choice to finish off Palace of Darkness and Eastern Palace now after finding the bow.
Yeah, this is a nice scenario for runners when they get to clear up both these dungeons at a clip without having, with the mirror, and without having to sort of make it a complicated scenario.
And they are both very quick to clear at this point. I don't believe there are any items left in either of them.
Yeah,
well, there might
absolutely right.
There might be one in pod still, but it's along the way, so just after the bowlock side. So.
Looks like werfjig's gonna go ahead and take care of Swamp Palace while he's here. Of course, he will find his bow, and he will also find Ether, which will be a happy find for him.
Yep. So it's difficult to say at this point if either runner is advantaged over the other. JohnnySpot, of course, will still have to do Ice Palace. And at this particular juncture, it's still non-go mode, so it's not like he can take a shorter route through it. Yeah, absolutely. Kane is still potential at Pyramid Ferry, so there's lots of places that Kane could be at this particular time. As well, there's a lot of potential for them to require finding additional items just to unlock an area that it might be in. Boots being one of them at this point.
Of course, we still have silver arrows hanging out, and while not required, and with runners who are 2 and 2, you can imagine that they have done silverless cannon, but it's always a nice item to have to shorten that fight quite a bit.
So the troll that this seed could throw at us would be something like Ice Rod and Kane in Turtle Rock.
Ooh, that would be unfortunate.
Yeah, just to make it worse, or even worse, like Ice Rod required on the pedestal, or it can't be on the pedestal. Ice Rod required to kill Trinax to give Boots to obtain the cane.
werfjig opts to not do left side of Swamp Palace here. He'll pick up a little bit of time. Again, not that we're saying that either runner is advantaged over the other, but it would save him a little bit of time because I believe there wasn't anything of value on that left side. Well, MrJohnnySpot's going to make his way to the Helmosaur King. He has his gold sword. I know he has Master Sword still, so this will be a little bit of a longer fight for him, but without those silver arrows either, especially in that last phase. But 17 hits will get him to demask the Phantom of the Helmosaur here.
Yeah, Worf's going to actually do the left side. He can't make that call yet with him missing 2 items, and there being a lot of items left in Swamp Palace. You cannot make the call. It's such a huge risky gamble to skip left side swamp.
Well, down goes the Helmosaur King for MrJohnnySpot, and his reward is going to be a nice compass, so I'm sure he's thrilled to be getting that, and his next crystal. He'll likely jump right into Eastern after that and make very, very quick work of the Armos Knights.
Yep, but then at that point, providing he doesn't find Kane along the way, we'll be heading down to Ice Palace, I assume. And werfjig will be doing probably the exact opposite path, and doing Palace of Darkness and Eastern Palace as soon as he finishes the swamp. At that point, it'll be very interesting to see what our runners decide to do. Pyramid Ferry, of course, being a fairly logical check. There is still the Hookshot Cave, which has not been checked. Lots of 4 chests there. Spike Cave, now technically in logic with the finding of the cape.
I don't think either runner has actually dipped into Desert Palace at this point, so there's potential that a couple of items, even without the boots, are available to them.
Absolutely. Skullwoods has 2 fairly straightforward checks to look at.
So the nice thing for the runners is it's not necessarily, they're not in a place where they're scratching their heads for things to do. So that gives them time to, think about their next move while having some options on the back burner.
So we see here just how long Ice Palace is, as MrJohnnySpot's able to get through 2 dungeons in the time it's going to take werfjig to get through this one. Of course, with Palace of Darkness being already cleared and Eastern Palace being relatively straightforward, even if it wasn't already cleared. that's a little bit of a unfair comparison, but
Just missing that double kill at MrJohnnySpot side. It's tough when you have the regular arrows to time that just about right, and you know, just a second off and you miss it.
so we're gonna see how much easier this fight is for werfjig than it was for MrJohnnySpot with the butter sword. He's not gonna need to do 2 swipes on the Argus eyeball puffs.
And MrJohnnySpot takes down the Armos with a very, very quick kill. So nice job to him there. And we will see where he goes next. And like you said, Crow Zone, it could be Ice Palace since that is wide open to him.
Yeah, I would be pretty surprised at this point if it's not. He could also decide to do some overworld checks instead, but it looks like he's going to Ice Palace.
I will say bootsless seeds are a little bit rough sometimes on a runner. It does get a little exhausting having to walk everywhere, and there's always that threat of having the key on the torch that is always sticking in the back of your head. So we're hoping maybe we find boots soon as well.
And 2 swings of the butter, 2 spins with the butter sword is all it takes to kill Argus. Gets a red boomerang for his troubles there, and his second crystal, or his Swamp Palace crystal. Yes, Werf did pick up the bow. So I expect him now to flute over to the 5 location and head into Palace of Darkness.
It'll be nice for werfjig having that butter sword, especially that second phase of the Helmstar King. It's a little bit quicker with it, without having the silver arrows, of course. It won't save him a ton of time, but it is nice to have.
Yeah, so with Ice Palace being, when JohnnySpot finishes Ice Palace, he's gonna have to make a decision of whether or not he wants to go into Misery Mire and hope for a Vanilla Cane, or instead start looking at some of the overworld. And I'm not sure exactly what path he's going to choose at this point.
Yeah, that's a tough call to make. You know, some people would cross their fingers and hope that Kane was in its dungeon of origin, but I don't know. If I were in that position, I don't know that I would make that bet. But then again, I'm not a betting man.
Yeah, there is, like, Hookshot Cave and Desert Palace. There's some other places that we haven't really looked at yet. Swamp or Skullwoods, still potential there.
We still do have the Catfish location to check as well, which I don't think either runner has checked at this point.
Indeed, that is definitely a potential. Spike Cave plus Hookshot is 5 overworld checks, and you can't deny the value potential there.
Absolutely agree with that. And, you know, you kind of think about the philosophy is, do I check these one-off locations thinking that this is where the game would sort of bait me into going and with success, or do I check something that statistically may have something, statistically would be more likely to have something?
Additionally, the spike or overworld checks at the Hookshot Cave were completable on their first run if either of them had made that little check into Lake Hylia Island before heading up Death Mountain. So it's something that you kind of think to yourself, well, I wouldn't have had access to that anyway. And that might change how you think about where you might want to go.
We have werfjig momentarily heading into the Helmstar King as MrJohnnySpot is continuing to work his way through Ice Palace to clear that out, hoping he's going to find perhaps something that he wants, but we all know that the king is not here for him.
Mm-hmm. And you really see the difference. Ice Palace, if you are true go moding it, is about 3 minutes to complete. Versus the 6 or 7 it is as a full complete dungeon.
With that Buttersword werfjig taking down Helmstar King in just 2 slashes, or it might have been a spin and a slash, but taking him down for his compass, and likely going right into Eastern Palace following this to complete that as well, which again at this point would put our runners very, very close together and in about the same space in terms of locations checked.
Mm-hmm.
MrJohnnySpot finding his cape, which again brings back to the front of my mind that they do have that bumper cave, the bumper ledge to check, so that could be something as well.
Yeah, now I can't be sure. I know that MrJohnnySpot went to Graveyard Ledge, but I'm not sure. I can't remember if he did take a look at what was on Bumper Cave as he went in that direction. So I'm not entirely sure if he has that knowledge. I certainly don't, so... And it turns out our runners are going to be pretty much coming out of these divergence even. MrJohnnySpot's about to hit Cold Stare. werfjig is just about at Armos Knights. Oh, unfortunately doesn't get that Igor kill. Has to wait for the second cycle.
MrJohnnySpot picking up a couple of those magic refills or magic drops right before he goes into his Cold Stare fight, so he's well equipped for that. And we're gonna, yeah, as you said, we're gonna see these are gonna be very close together, these boss fights.
Yeah, now MrJohnnySpot has no magic. He does have some blue potions if he wants to choose to, or actually I think he probably has a green potion as well if he wants to just make use of that. And otherwise, he's setting up for hammer strats.
Nice thing about what Mr. Oh, go ahead.
I'm just saying the Armos Knight fight is significantly faster here for werfjig than the Cold Stare fight is. And so although he started the battle later, he is going to be slightly ahead here than MrJohnnySpot's struggle through Cold Stare.
The nice thing about what MrJohnnySpot is doing is he's hugging that north wall, so those ice drops from the ceiling don't actually materialize for him, so that helps him out a little bit in his fight with Colster. But he's got to be careful. He's got 2.5 hearts left, and looks like he's going to have to use that potion. It's not a bad idea. You don't want to die here.
Yeah, that's the last thing you'd like. It looks like werfjig's going to go ahead and check the Hookshot Cave area. And I like this call. Overworld in V29 has a higher % chance of having progression than it used to in previous versions. So I feel like this is the call that I would make, I must say. As opposed to trying to make a gamble in Misery Mire. We'll see if Mr. Johnny Spot does the same thing.
Alright, well, he's taking that flute out, so it looks like he may be indeed going up to, well, he's gonna go down to Misery Mire.
Yeah, he also has the desert still to check, and he hasn't made the Mire checks at this time, right? Has he gone into Mire Shed? I don't believe so. That's why he's still on Master Sword, because he didn't go up to the ledge. So there's a lot more here for him to look at than simply going into Misery Mire. Yeah, that was his first look at the medallion requirement of Ether. And so by the time he finishes these overworld checks here, the Mire Shed and Checkerboard Cave, he's going to be given... werfjig's going to be done with Hookshot Cave, and probably even Spike Cave if he remembers to go there. So just a million pieces of heart here in Hookshot Cave. Wow, all 4.
Yeah, not paying off for him, but we'll see likely the Spike Cave coming up next. If Mr. Johnny Spot opts to go into Desert just to take a peek to see if there's anything accessible in terms of items that get, it may put him ahead if Kane is here.
He's choosing not to.
Looks like werfjig was knocking on the front door to Ganon's Tower. Nobody was home.
Yep. He's gonna see what's going on in Spike Cave now. And you know, the miracle find here is the Cane of Samaria for werfjig.
Alright, about to see if Spike Cave is indeed going to pay off, and it beats the Boots.
Boots! Now, Boots might lead him into Desert, just as a quick check before he goes to Misery Mire. Unfortunately, I think he might be making that call now, yeah. So we'll see what happens where werfjig decides to flute off to. He could as well go ahead and do the northern route here, check King's Tomb, Bonk Rocks, Graveyard Ledge, and Bumper Cave. werfjig hasn't seen all of those yet, so I kind of like that call as well. It leads into Catfish.
And you know, I don't think he's doing it, but he could have also cleared out, well, no, Skullwood's dependent, so, I mean, he could have dipped in there, checked those items, and then made those checks as well, but I do agree with you. I like this play. I think it's a nice wealth of overworld items possible to him.
Yeah, he's gonna go up and look at Bumper Cave. That's awesome for us. The you know, conventional wisdom aside, you know, at this point, looking into pendant dungeons is really the last possible gambles for our runners. Skullwoods, of course, not a particularly long check. Pyramid Fairy here from Mr. Spot, or Mr. Johnny Spot. Bonk Rocks from werfjig.
So we'll see which one of these two runners checks pay off, whether it's, you know, what werfjig is doing right now is doing the graveyard checks, bonk rocks, etc., or if it is indeed the Pyramid Fairy that is going to pay off.
Interesting, yeah. Mr. Johnny Spot didn't take the faster route to Pyramid Fairy by Dark World and then mirroring to Light World and going back to Dark World by the castle gates.
Alright, well, a 50 rupee pickup and something red, but not the cane that he was looking for. Mr. Johnny Spot's going to throw in that bottle for something good, hopefully. And werfjig, I don't believe has found anything of value either. He is going to get King's Tomb, so we'll see if maybe that was the play.
Ugh, the book. More fetch quests.
Well, now we have 2 tablets to check if they want. They also have another entry point into desert, not that they didn't have one before. And it looks like werfjig rather might be thinking about catfish at this point.
Yeah, I like this. I wish that the runners had maybe made this potential check earlier. Of course, now that I know that the boots, the book was behind boots and King's Tomb being a very important call, can't really blame them for not doing it. This is the right time, I suppose, but we'll see what happens.
All right, well, we're just about to check what's on catfish for werfjig, and he's hoping it's a king.
He misses the swag bonk there, but picks up red mail.
Looks like he's going to go ahead and do Pyramid Fairy as well. At least that's what it's looking like. And MrJohnnySpot's going to take care of Jeremiah and the chest. As well as I believe he hasn't taken care of the hammer pegs either. So he has 3 checks there to do.
Yeah, both of these runners now are kind of at a different level of the amount of overworld checks they have. I think werfjig is slightly ahead, to be honest. He's going to go down and look at the tablet first before going to the bomb hut. And it'll be really frustrating if it's actually at the ether tablet. Climbing Death Mountain yet again is not what anyone wants to do.
All right, well, let's see what this tablet has. It is just, it's a heart. A lot of red things coming up, but not the red things that the runners want.
Yep, but again, werfjig is... Now he's going to go ahead and take a look. Perhaps he might make the call for heading into Misery Mire, but I'm assuming he's going to look at Desert Palace first.
Yeah, Desert's a quick check. As long as the item's not in Lamolus, and even if it is, it's a fairly quick check for him. And it'll put him right back at Mire if he chooses to think, or chooses to check if it's in its vanilla home.
But since he's here, I think that that's the call he's going to make at this juncture. I think it's like, well, I'll check Desert. If Desert pays off, then I'll go, or doesn't pay off, then I'll go into Misery Mire and we'll just see what's happened. So Desert wasn't boots locked. Very interesting there. This means that it's potential. If he does find the Cane of Samaria here in Desert, it's been available to us for a long time. Big Key's going to give us a key.
Unfortunately, this dungeon's going to make these runners go to and fro across the dungeon to get the items, at least in this part of it. So I'm sure that's not something super thrilling or exciting or rather welcome by these runners. But it is what it is.
Yeah, you can't. At this point, there may have been some more efficient routing choices that they could have made. It's hard to fault them for any of their decisions at this time. After the fact, of course, you could say, well, if you'd done it in this particular order, you would have been better off. MrJohnnySpot getting his final sword upgrade there from the Gary's Lunchbox. And it turns out that there will definitely be an item on Landmola. Along with 300 rupees here in Desert. At this juncture, I guess werfjig, I think you just got to do it. Yep, and he's going to head up for that.
It's interesting how the seed sort of started out bottlenecking the runners into one place and in one direction. Now we're back to where we started in terms of both these runners being sort of in a very similar location in that they are picking off these locations one at a time now to see if they get what they need for their go mode.
Of course, you're getting a couple of bonks on doors there. Just feels bad.
Looks like
look
Mr.
at this,
Johnny's
MrJohnnySpot making the call.
Yeah, he can't do very much of anything once he gets in here, but at least he can open it up.
He's gonna look at it, go, oh yeah, I need a cane. Or he's just taking a different route up to the top of Hookshot Cave here. Dropping some frames here for us, but we see just a big 20 on Land Moles.
Oof. Red rupee, big 20. Not the red he wanted, but a lot of red. A lot of red, just, which I'm sure was making these runners see red at this point because they want to get their go mode item.
Wow, so, werfjig, do you head to Misery Mire or do you go and check elsewhere? He's going to go up and do Skullwoods at this point. You know, and well, it's one of those things where you think to yourself, if it's vanilla and this is the wrong call, that's awful, but is it worse to have gone through Misery Mire looking for something and not been able to find it? It's really just 6 of one, half dozen of the other for a runner at this juncture.
Yeah, I'm hoping for werfjig's sake that this item's not going to be on Mothula, because at least then it'll be a fairly quick check for him, but if it's on Mothula, we have a little bit of a longer haul to go before getting those items out of Skullwoods.
Yeah, and MrJohnnySpot there finding the boots is going to send him down a rabbit's hole of other item locations to check that werfjig just finished up. So there's an item, just an arrow capacity upgrade here in Skullwoods. Let's see if we see something else. If he's thinking he knows that it can't be it can't be on the pedestal, so he may, as soon as he finds a second item, pull out of Skullwoods.
Well, MrJohnnySpot's going to go ahead and check all those boots locations around the Sanctuary, Bonk Rocks, King's Tomb, and I believe he already checked the Graveyard Ledge, so that's out of contention for him.
Yeah, and that's fortunate for him because he doesn't have to go into the Dark World to do these 2 checks.
Of course, the item that werfjig is looking for in Skullwoods would have made this room a little bit easier for him, and MrJohnnySpot is now literate, which will send him perhaps checking these locations as well.
Oh, it's just finding everything that you don't want to see. We're just getting the big key in the first chest here on this side of Skullwoods. Is going to have to go back to check the big key chest.
Yeah, this dungeon is not being very kind to werfjig right now. It's making him work for that last item, which I hope pays off, and it's not just something garbagey.
So MrJohnnySpot's going to get his Bomblos tablet now. Something that he was lacking the last time he was in this area, so...
Oh my goodness, just a compass there for werfjig, so he's going to have to go deeper into Skullwoods.
So there's still one item here in before Mothula, then Mothula himself, one of which is going to contain an actual item and the other will be useless.
Alright, well, MrJohnnySpot going back into the Dark World over by Misery Mire. Does he make this dip into Misery Mire thinking it's vanilla, or it looks like he's going to just go ahead into Desert first?
Yeah. He's going to find nothing that he wants here. You know, and this seed started very linear and has now devolved into like that one last item hunt, as it often is the case. And there he is.
All right, 1 hour and 39 minutes in, we have werfjig in go mode, so he's gonna go do just that. He's gonna go.
No, he's gonna get a mirror bunk first though, because Skullwoods is just poisonous to him. It should be noted that, of course, they had the fire rod at the very start. Sword was available to them as well very early on, so this was a basically not Sphere 1 check, but it was a potential Sphere 2, I guess, if you want to call it that, location for our runners. They could have easily checked this very, very early on. So now werfjig is just going to hope for a real easy route through Misery Mire. If he could find the big key in the first couple of chests, he's going to be happy.
And the nice thing for him is it is the last dungeon he has to complete in terms of crystals to get up to Ganon's Tower. So that is a good, it's a short go mode, I suppose, up to Ganon's Tower, but it is one I'm sure is very welcomed.
Yep, so now it's really just the question of where will he find the big key, and will it troll him in the vanilla big key location?
Oh no, MrJohnnySpot is making the gamble, the hope that the cane is in its vanilla home. Unfortunately, he's not going to find it here.
Yeah, you have to think, like, well, it is rando, and that means that it can technically be anywhere. The percent chance of it being here is so much lower than some other location, and so, you know, at some point you do need to pull the trigger and check, which is where MrJohnnySpot's going, but it's almost heartbreaking for him, you know, like, it's gonna feel really bad when he finishes this dungeon, or gets as far as he can, knowing that he'll have done a full clear, although it doesn't seem to be any faster for werfjig at this point.
Of course, random isn't over till it's over, so we have plenty of play left to go, but it is tough to see MrJohnnySpot making a move, we know, in the wrong direction.
So werfjig setting up the fire rod there. I thought he was going to maybe potentially make the call to check the vanilla big key location, but instead he's going to come out here and find the big key elsewhere. So good on him. Can now take a little bit of a shortcut through. Oh, no, he's going to go back around. He has the boots, so this is technically faster. Misery Mire is one of the weirder dungeons to route, and a lot of runners you kind of get used to a specific pattern, and you just stick with it because it's what you know. Can't really fault anyone for that, because the number of keys required to finish Misery Mire is 0, despite there being quite a few locked doors, or at least the front part.
We have werfjig making his descent into the basement here to make his way toward Vitreous. He won't have the silver arrows to help him out, but he does have the gold sword, and he has a red mail as well, which is going to be very helpful. And also has the cape, though not half magic, but a lot of things, a lot of different strategies he could use to defeat Vitreous here.
Yeah, his run through Ganon's Tower is going to be fairly straightforward. Most runners are comfortable with silverless if they have to make use of it. So. And of course, there's still the trolled by that spike block. It intercepted his cane bolt. As I was saying, most runners are quite comfortable making the silverless play. And of course, there's still plenty of checks potentially in.
Oh no! Oh boy! Getting that ice rod could send MrJohnnySpot to. No, he can't. No, he doesn't have the cane. I take that back.
Yes, he's fortunate in that regard. But it does mean that potentially silvers, for instance, were in Turtle Rock, or may end up being in Turtle Rock.
All right, werfjig heading into his Vitreous fight. He's going to go ahead and use cape strats here. He's just going to go ahead and slash away at those eyeballs while being invincible and invisible, and take out, of course, Vitreous very, very quickly.
Yep. Even with half magic, or without half magic, you know, Butter Sword just makes quick work of this particular boss. And with that, werfjig is now ready to head up the mountain and go visit Ganon's tower. So while we are not on we're on an ALTTP randomizer channel. We don't have the key game officially, but get your guesses in chat right now. Where will we find the big key? Will it be between numbers 1 and 22? Let's see who is going to be a lucky guesser at this time. So, the Prof Gamer, are you going to give us a guess?
I always go with 14. I don't think I've ever been right, but I'm going to go 14. How about you, Crozone?
Well, you know, they found the boots, so that makes me not want to say the troll number 3. I'm going to go with 11 today. It's been a number I have been avoiding lately, so why not?
Of course, if you win the Big King game on a Link to the Past Randomizer channel, you get the love and affection of everyone working behind the scenes.
Absolutely. MrJohnnySpot now kind of making his way through these tablet locations that he has to check. And I would imagine he'll start entering pendant dungeons relatively soon. Or at least we hope for his sake that will be the case.
Alright, well, he took a moment of pause, which is good. I thought maybe he would perhaps consider Desert Palace, but it's good that he's going to go up to Skullwoods and find his cane.
Absolutely. And you got to figure at this point, if you're werfjig, you know, not having found the cane early on, you might feel a little bit uncomfortable knowing that it was something you could have had early. So I'm going to expect him to go full go through Ganon's tower. He's not going to look for anything else. He's just going to be making the mad dash to get through this seed.
Yeah, I don't assume that he will go ahead and try to pick up any extra items in Ganon's tower if he doesn't have to. With the, as you said, with the gold sword, it's pretty standard silverless fight, pretty quick silverless fight in terms of how silverless fights are usually. Just have to be a little bit careful. Get that torch flitch is a really nice thing to get, so you don't have to waste your magic, especially without half magic.
Yes, and Techno asks, no one's gonna check Turtle Rock. Well, they didn't get the cane until the last item, and they had all their crystals, so they couldn't really check Turtle Rock. So yeah, no one will have headed in there. werfjig is gonna head. werfjig's actually gonna go right side first. So he's done checks 1 and 2, and we'll be seeing check 3 in just a minute. Oh, gets wall mastered. Wonder if this will change his decision-making process. Yep, it does. He switches back to left side. Number 3 is a key.
We're gonna have 4, 5, 6, and 7 in the Stalfo's child or children or kid room. I don't know if they're children or kids, I forget.
Yep, the Bob Fairy has been converted into a fairy by his decision to pick up that key. So 4 is a key, 5 is an arrow capacity upgrade, 6 is another arrow capacity upgrade. We get to look at the stun prize, which is a single rupee, and there's 300 rupees in number 7. Bomb capacity upgrade in chest number 8.
Well, MrJohnnySpot doing a nice little bomb jump there in Skullwoods as werfjig is continuing on his search for that big key.
So Fire Snake Room will provide us with check number 9. Just a big 20.
We're heading over to the Rando room, which is really only pertinent in randomizers in Link to the Past, so there are 4 more items in there to check.
So these will be checks 10, 11, 12, and 13. We see 10 is a rupees, 11 is rupees, 12 is a bomb, and 13 is a piece of heart, which actually refilled werfjig's health up. So not too bad at this late juncture in the tower.
Oh, we got Bob's chest. Bob's chest is next, followed by the ice armos. So we have 3 items in the back of ice armos, and Bob's chest is a single chest. So we'll see what happens. All right, Mr. JohnnySpot enters his go mode as he gets his cane from Skullwoods. He's going to go ahead and hop right on over to. Looks like he's going to get a potion and hop right on over to Mire next.
So 14 turns out was another big 20. And we have to deal with Ice Armos.
Man, werfjig is not going to be happy if right side was the answer all along.
And it's getting close to that being the case. If he doesn't find the chest, if he doesn't find the big key here, he's going to rue the day that Wallmaster grabbed him. Oh, Ice Armos stomping on him, but manages to finally finish off the last red one.
All right, here come the next 3 chests. Let's see if he gets his key.
15, 16, and 17. So, oh my goodness. He was right in his original call to go full right side. That's just going to feel bad.
And of course, it wasn't even like silver arrows to make him a little happy that he did left side. It was just complete and utter garbage.
He got absolutely nothing from that. You know, that's the first time I think I've ever seen this come up as a situation where you make the right call, get wall mastered, and then go all the way through the other side and not find what you need. Yeah, gives a slash to that wall master. How dare it ruin his ability to get through Ganon's tower faster.
All right, this is going to be close here as he gets through. Oh,
Yep.
Just making it through. Nice.
Just making it through. werfjig remembering that, hey, Gold Sword is actually going to kill these Gyptos in 2 hits, so it's just get rid of them. So in 18 we find a big 20, 19 is the map, 20 is the big key. If anyone checked 20, they were correct. 21, just another big 20. He's just going to take a look at it. Why not? It's right there in front of his face. He doesn't actually need any more keys, so he might choose to head to the big key chest. Nope, he's not going to. And werfjig is beginning his ascent of the tower now.
He'll have a couple of chests he can opt to check on his way up and out toward Aghanim 2, if he so chooses. Of course, there could be silvers sitting in there, so I don't see why he maybe wouldn't opt to check those there on his way up.
Getting a nice lineup there for the first Mick.
JohnnySpot doing cape dash strats through Victory.
Oh.
Very quick work.
So what we have here is a situation where werfjig has run out of arrow in Ganon's tower. So he's going to leave and come back in, hoping to find some in some of the pots along the way. Couldn't get past the Mimic Cave. That is just an uncomfortable feeling here. Hopefully he knows where he might find some additional arrow stacks in Ganon's tower.
Well, this is going to give Mr. JohnnySpot a nice opportunity to catch up, and especially if he goes right side, he's going to gain a really nice chunk of time.
Yeah, with 44 arrows on his inventory, not concerned at all. So we'll see. This might be a turning point in the game. Oof, werfjig going in the wrong room there. There's not going to find any arrows there unless you get lucky on the item drops.
Man, this is a bad feeling. You got in here and you run out of arrows, and you know it's. And, you know, at this point in the seed, you're closing in on 2 hours, and you haven't seen it done yet from your opponent. This is got to be a real nerve-wracking situation for werfjig.
Oh, he's choosing to save and quit out. He's going to go and find arrows in a place where he knows he can find some.
Oh man, this puts Mr.
Wow.
Johnny right back in the driver's seat here.
What a turn of events, ladies and gentlemen. This is why Randomizer is always, it's not over, as you say, until it's over. We don't know exactly what's going to happen here. MrJohnnySpot clearly is in a better spot to deal with the arrow situation, but of course he's going to have to make the miracle call to go to the full right side first. If he's feeling behind, though, he might choose to do so, and he might make up some time. No bomb, no arrows there, werfjig, I'm sorry to say.
He may want to go over to Kakariko Village. That hut, I believe, it has some arrows when you bomb it open with the rats in it. So he may. He's. If I were in his position, I would be as nervous and panicked as he is right now.
I think he's going to go to Eastern Palace, where there's definite. He knows for sure that there are a bunch of arrow upgrades in her pots. I'm not sure. I think the bombable hut has bombs and single rupees. I'm not entirely sure where you might find arrows in this particular case.
MrJohnnySpot going right side. We'll see if he follows through with it. If he follows through with it, he's going to be in really good shape here.
Wow, I can't believe this situation. So he gets the key and he mirrors out. Unfortunately, he's going to go to the left. But this divergence that werfjig is making is very long. He's going to want to collect more than a few arrows too, so when he gets down to this area, the room that the big key chest is in Eastern Palace has several arrows under those pots, but I don't know if it'll be enough for him to feel comfortable. Oh, not getting the skip on these. This is going to be a very close race, ladies and gentlemen. Just an awful situation for werfjig to find himself in. So he's grabbed 10 arrows. He's content with that, and he's going to head back up now. He needs at least 8 to get through the mimic rooms. So he doesn't have very much room for arrows. If he misses more than twice.
Yeah, and MrJohnnySpot's having a little bit of trouble here on the on this room. He keeps getting hit by that moving spike rather. So that gives werfjig a little bit of a breath to catch up back to where he was.
Oh, MrJohnnySpot trying to take some skips here. If he just uses his hook shot, he'll find himself in a much better position. Oh no! Both of these runners, you could tell, are getting anxious here. They're playing for their tournament lives. They probably have checked to see that their opponent has not completed the game yet, and it's really making them feel like they must be right at the same point as one another. MrJohnnySpot, of course, has to believe that he was behind just because of the nature of how long it took him to find the cane. werfjig, you can't really ever count on your opponent not having arrows. So now there's still, I would say that werfjig still has some advantage here. He doesn't need to find the big key. MrJohnnySpot's only about halfway to the big key at this juncture. It does mean that he has to be very precise with his arrows, though. He'll be able to pick up a few extras after he gets through the first mimic room.
Yeah, werfjig's gonna have to be very careful with how he uses those arrows. It's gonna feel incredibly bad if he's got to dip back out for more arrows.
So this is the moment of truth for him. He needs to get through this without missing any, or with missing very few.
See, this is a nice place where that Mire shield would have come a little bit in handy for more of a worry less worry room in terms of where he is right now.
Oh, these BMOs trolling him. Oh, he misses one. Misses the second one. There are 5 arrows here to give him a replenishment stock, but still. He's got to land 3, so... There's 2 more that he needs to land. Okay, 1 more now. Oh, he gets through. Okay. He did need those 5 arrows, though, I'll tell you.
That was nerve-wracking to watch it, and it's given MrJohnnySpot a significant catch-up ability. So we'll see if that comes into play a little bit later.
Yeah, with Silverless Masters, or with Silverless Ganon being in play, there's a lot of potential for variance here. Both runners have the Butter Sword, but if you can't get those spins, if you miss the torch glitch, there's going to be a lot of potential for there to be a difference in their ability to defeat Ganon at the end of the game. It could come right down to that Ganon fight as well. Not having any arrows, not having a good supply of arrows here for the gauntlet section sometimes can throw runners for a loop if you're used to using them to help clear some of these monsters out. Oh, another 5 there is going to give werfjig some comfort as far as arrows are concerned.
MrJohnnySpot about to learn the unfortunate news that right side is the way to go.
Yep. Now imagine if he had gone right side first, it would have been a very different situation for... And I can't help but think that werfjig is going to be feeling very tilty at this point. Like, having to leave Ganon's tower and come back is just a sinking feeling in your heart when you're playing in a race.
And he's got to be careful. He's got 2 hearts left. I don't know if he has a potion. I believe he may have a blue potion, but he still has to be careful. If he's got to use it now, he has 3 hearts, so that's good.
Let's see if he can get some 1 cycles through these Wizrobe rooms. The first one he does. There's some hearts for him to pick up there along the way. That's kind of helpful. MrJohnnySpot also getting low on health. Oh, unfortunately missing the close Wizrobe there for the 1 cycle, but gets him in the second time.
And MrJohnnySpot gets his big key, and he's going to go ahead and mirror right on out to the entrance, or fall, and die.
Well, I mean, it gives him a health refill, so that's kind of a nice thing at this point. So,
yeah, that may have been purposeful, you're right. So we'll see, but he has 21 arrows going up, so hopefully he won't run into any of the difficulties that werfjig did.
Yeah. Ooh, werfjig taking a nice little swag bunk there to get across that gap. I don't know if that really speeds things up or not. Interesting to see. It's the first time I've seen it. Finds a piece of heart there in this chest in Mini Homicide room, and 3 bombs. Not the silver arrows that he was looking for.
He's got 2 chests left to check, and then of course, if they're really interested, Ganon does give him that intel after phase 3.
Alright, so no silver arrows there. He's got 1 more possible check here after he finishes Trolldorm 2. Ooh, a little close, but successfully kills Trolldorm. And I don't see why he wouldn't check for the silver arrows. It feels like it's something he wants. Gets a big 20 there. And we are off to Aga 2 fight with MrJohnnySpot hot on his heels.
Yeah, this could come down to something going terribly wrong in the Ganon fight, or a slower Aghanim fight, the Trigonagonum tree, as I like to call it, as you work your way through mathematic-like sequences to get your doubles and triples.
Well, just a single on the first one. That was an awkward positioning. This one's much nicer, but unfortunately doesn't get it lined up, and blue balls from Aghanim on cycle 2. Oh! He's got another one there.
Some tough patterns that he's getting, and he's got to be careful. He's down to 3 hearts as well.
Oh, another blue ball. Just trolling. So yes, it is possible that the silver arrows could have been in tile room 22, but also in the big key chest here in Ganon's tower. And werfjig takes off. Aga 2 takes care of him, and the Ganon fight begins momentarily.
He is going into it with 2 hearts. Of course, you don't get a refill here, so that's tough. That's a tough situation in the end. But he, again, I'm not sure if he's got a safety potion in the back pocket.
Yeah, I know MrJohnnySpot does. He's got a red potion and a blue potion. He picked up a red potion from the Fat Fairy room when he threw a bottle in. He's going to use his blue potion now on Landmolus 2, then gets a simultaneous kill on all 3. So werfjig goes ahead and takes the death here, just to death warp right off the bat. I don't fault him for that. If he's not super confident with his ability to do Silverless Ganon, he's gonna probably want some additional hearts there instead of trying to make your way through the first 3 phases and then going, oh, whoops, and dying. So I think that's probably a fair time save.
Yeah, I think that was a good move on his part. You're right, just to get some of those heart refills, because a two heart Ganon fight is challenging and nerve-wracking, because if you get so far in and then you die, you've kind of wasted all that time.
So spin strats here with the butter sword is not really ideal. You definitely don't need it, unlike tempered, but it does put Ganon into phase 3.
MrJohnnySpot checking those last few chests, also hoping for silver, as we of course know they will not be there for him. But we're about to find out from Ganon in just a couple of moments here where those silvers actually were. I'm going to be guessing they might have been in Turtle Rock.
Yeah, that would be my guess as well. They've checked most other places, so the only real locations left would be Turtle Rock is where it was. And that should come as very little surprise here. He's going to try to make sure he gets the torch glitch. That helps a lot on Silverless strat. It's really frustrating to have to do both torches, especially when you have no half magic. Ooh, gets the quick hit there. That's really nice. And another one. And he got a 3 cycle there on that torch. That's really impressive. He's actually doing the same thing there where he's setting up for it. Gets another one there. Number 2 as well.
And werfjig is doing a really nice job in this fight.
werfjig's Silverless is really great right here. He's timing it to get the 3rd hit per torchlight. There's another 2. This is a clinic on how to Silverless. He knows that he doesn't need the double anymore. And there it goes. Wow! That is a well-practiced Silverless. And it should be noted that getting 3 hits per torch cycle is not easy. That is a very challenging thing to do, and he consistently did it. So congratulations to werfjig. GG. He has completed this race with an official speed racing TV time of 2 hours, 8 minutes, and 52 seconds, putting him in the 3-2 position, keeping his tournament bracket hopes alive at this point. So congratulations to him. And we are excited for him. We'll see if we can get him into have a little chat with us in a few moments. Meanwhile, JohnnySpot is on his Ganon fight. So we went from being significantly separated the two to just one boss fight between them.
Yeah, that arrow snafu really made it a very exciting race toward the end, and but that flawless silverless Ganon fight really put him head and shoulders into that victory space.
MrJohnnySpot just going ahead and using the regular slashes from the butter sword. We'll get that. He'll get put into phase 3.
MrJohnnySpot doing a nice job getting into phase 3 and soon into phase 4 of Ganon to show off his silverless strats. Alright, and we're going to be joined by werfjig just momentarily here.
So MrJohnnySpot not getting the the torch glitch. You'll be able to see how much more challenging this fight is when you don't have that additional time that you're afforded when you only have to light one of them. You can see here it's really tricky to get 2, let alone the 3 that werfjig was consistently hitting.
All right, well, we are joined by werfjig. GG on a really nice match. Sorry about that arrow situation at the end.
Yeah, it just goes to show you never give up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That was a heartbreaking moment for you, trying to figure out where you could go to find some arrows. I know that you were looking for a bomb or a shop there, and had to go all the way back to Eastern.
I just kind of paused and I was just looking at that arrow going on that spike, and but yeah, I'm really thankful I had somehow such a big lead. What was Johnny's go mode item?
He as well was searching for the Kanan.
Yeah.
He checked a few different locations before making the call to go into Skullwoods. He actually double dipped Mire in the hopes that it would be vanilla.
Yeah.
So chat really wants you to know, did you recall that you had the shovel and that you could dig for arrows?
Yeah, no, I didn't.
Yeah,
Just-
so...
I wanted to take the world tour.
Yeah. I mean, how often does that come up that it's something that you ever think about?
When I found the GT bit key, I thought I was really behind because I got wall mastered.
Oh yeah, as well. That was...
Yeah. At
That
that
was
point, I
another
was
very
like,
interesting...
at that point, I'm just like hoping that was a blessing in disguise, but nope, it wasn't.
Yeah, I was saying, and we were mentioning that that how often do you get wall mastered and have it actually be a benefit? You're like, oh well, you know what? I should have gone this way anyways. And I don't think I've ever seen a single race where it has been the wrong, like unfortunate for a runner. So.
Yep, this time it was, but you know, thankfully I'm still alive.
I'm gonna go ahead and break in and say we have MrJohnnySpot finishing his Ganon fight with an official SRTV time of 2:13:46. So GG's to MrJohnnySpot, and what turned out to be a very close ending for these two runners.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to ask you. You performed a clinic there. You put on a nice show on the silverless strategies. That's something that you've been preparing.
Not really in practice. I watched. I think I watched Christos do his, and I noticed that if you do it a certain way, then you can get 3 in a row. But in a couple practice races where I had to do silverless, I missed the torch glitch, and that really screwed me. So I switched to lantern and just like spammed it, just to make sure, because that's the biggest thing about silverless.
Yeah, absolutely. The torch glitch makes all the difference here. MrJohnnySpot did not have that, so you're forced to get one, maybe two if you're lucky. And you should be pat yourself on the back there though, because you got 3 almost every time there, except for the last time when you didn't need them.
Yeah, that was
so that was amazing.
That was a definitely a first.
Absolutely. So, at any point in this race, like I'm just getting a general sense of your feelings. Like it started off very linear. Everybody kind of had to go the same way.
Oh yeah.
Did you feel like positionally you were in a good spot, or was there any point that you recall going like, "Oh no, this is a problem," other than near the very end?
No, I kind of felt that it was a very linear seed. I did do the sick kid check before Aghanim because I knew that if the Moon Pearl wasn't on the pyramid, then that would be kind of a time loss going back, and I knew that pod would be the only place that I could go. So if sick kid had the Moon Pearl, I would have felt a little bit ahead because I'd been like, haha. But no,
Yeah.
not until probably Ice Palace is when I started to kind of panic.
Mr. Johnny Spot, thanks for joining us. GG to you. We have werfjig in here as well. What a nice race between you guys. Really well done between the two of you.
Yeah, GG, Werf.
Thanks, man. GG.
Yeah, so another thing that chat really would like us to bring up with you, they've been talking about it for quite some time, regarding the logic behind the Cane of Samaria. As it was your item that you were both hunting for, it turns out, and I think that this is correct, so I'm going to go with them. If you get a key from Cold Stare, if that last item from Cold Stare is a key, then you know that logically it's expecting you not to, or to have routed without using the bomb jump, right? The bomb jump, of course, is a logic break. So you would definitely have needed the cane to complete Ice Palace in this seed, outside of that sequence break. So they really want you to know that was a kind of a breadcrumb that you could have made use of. But I'm going to say, as a player as well, that I don't think I've ever encountered that specific situation. Is that something that you'd ever thought of? Either of you?
I can't say I've personally ever thought of it. It did finally hit me, though, that I had Fire Rod early, which meant that Skullwoods, especially with all the swords, was open pretty early.
I did think about it, but the only thing at that time, the only thing I could think of that it eliminated was the Fat Fairy. So
Yeah,
I skipped that.
Yeah, and so, yeah, I think MrJohnnySpot did check Fat Fairy as a result.
Yeah,
so,
I did.
Yeah, little nuance there that some people may not have been aware of, so we got to see it in action here. A couple of times we were also rooting for you to make that call to Catfish Zora once you had the flippers. MrJohnnySpot, at one point you were heading across the north part of Dark World, and then just, you hit Graveyard Ledge and were like, you know what, I'm out, and went up to Death Mountain. Is there any point in the run where you felt, other than the very end there, where you dipped into Misery Mire, where you felt was like a turning point in this very linear seed?
No. Struggling to find that Cane of Samaria. I had so many overworld spots left open, and then, getting things like Ice Rod in the book. I left one thing behind in Pod. There were a lot of places that I had to go cross off.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, just for you, werfjig, that puts you at 3-2. How do you feel about your positioning here in the tournament so far? And is there any kind of concerns or hopes for the upcoming rounds?
Just hanging by a thread and hoping that I don't start off so linear because, turning off your brain and playing and then suddenly mid-seed, it's like, oh, I can go multiple places, is kind of, it hurt my brain. So
yeah, it does become cruise control for a little while and then shocking yourself back out of it. I can see how you might, yeah. And for you, MrJohnnySpot, unfortunately falling to 2 and 3 does put your bracket stage hopes in jeopardy. At this time, there have been some drops in the schedule, and so there will be some 2-3 or some 4-3 players who will make it through. Is there? Do you have any hopes for the tournament, or are you having a good time, or what are your thoughts at this point?
I mean, yes, I have hopes, but I'm also having a good time regardless.
Yeah.
So yes to both of those questions.
Yeah. And so just as we're about to wrap up here, making way for the next games, werfjig, is there anything that you'd like to say? Any final comments? Anything that you'd appreciate or shout outs that you'd like to give to the fans following and whatnot?
Fans. No, shout outs to the commentators and to the trackers and the restreamers. I really appreciate the opportunity to rewatch my matches and see kind of where I fell off the wagon. So shout out to you guys.
Awesome, thank you. I'm sure everybody involved really appreciates just how much love and affection that both runners and viewers have been showering upon everyone. And for you, MrJohnnySpot, same opportunity. Any shout outs or things that you'd like to convey at this juncture?
I just want to say thanks to both of you guys for commentating, our tracker, restreamer, everyone that's put in on the tournament. It's been a lot of fun, and the restreams are always really great, not only just to watch back, but it's fun to know that other people can see the race on a wide audience.
Awesome. Thanks to you guys for putting on such a great show. It was a very tight race. Lots of ups and downs, so it was very entertaining to watch. I hope both of you take opportunity to rewatch and see what happened. I'm sure you'll be entertained. Thanks again.
Sure. GG, Johnny.
Yeah, GG. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
And of course, give these runners a follow, and they are fantastic. They put on a great show for you today, and so certainly give them a follow. I'd like to thank my co-commentator, Crowzone. It's been a ton of fun today, and I'd also like to thank Sinhee and Iceman F1 for working behind the scenes. It is amazing to see how wonderful and collaborative this community is, and this is just another example. And if you are not tired of Randomizer yet, and how could you be, there are a ton of matches going on today. I'm just pulling up the schedule now. If you give me 1 second, I'll tell you the matches coming up. All right, so for some further Randomizer fun, we have right now on Link to the Past Randomizer 2 channel, we have Unknown Availability versus Aestolia. So that is on Link to the Past Randomizer channel 2. And then our next match will be on Speed Gaming at 6 p.m. Of course, there are sometimes restreams that do pop up, so check back in with us on any of the Speed Gaming 1 through 6 or Link to the Past 1 through 4 channels, and you will have your fill of Randomizer. And I'd say thank you, and thank you to the audience for tuning in today. I've been the Profit Gamer.
And I'm Crowzone80.
And have a great afternoon, everyone.
See you next time.